Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited that you were able to join me today to talk about a subject that is very prevalent in any of our work environments today. I like this visual that we have of the elephant there because most often when we are dealing with toxic employees, that's exactly what we're dealing with. It's like, oh no, here comes the one who is always going to be the one that is going to disrupt the meeting and just difficult to deal with. So I love that slide. So let's just take a moment here and talk about what we're going to cover today. And I think what's so important is, let me share a story with you about a situation. Now, it could be any one of your situations in your work environment. It's not uncommon at all. And I'm going to go over the function of the sales. Okay. So here we are, we've hired this really dynamite salesperson. They are on the ball, they are in it, the numbers are fantastic, they're just really digging in. They start approaching people throughout the process, very new, and they start basically demanding information from them, and they start creating this very uncomfortable feeling with the team. We're going to talk about some of those behaviors in number one. But this isn't uncommon. This is what happens sometimes when we hire a new person and we think it's fantastic. They're all of a sudden turning all this work. But we never really look at what might be happening, again, when they are the behavior of a toxic employee, of what's really happening to all of the people around them. So we're going to be looking at what are some of those behaviors that do represent a toxic employee. And we're going to be looking at the impact on the business. And we're going to address, why is it then that many companies still keep a toxic employee around? We will take a look at, again, the management of this toxic employee and how we can take action. And we'll give you a 3-step process with that effort. And again, we will, of course, wrap up, answer questions. And along the way, as I said, please feel free to ask a question along the way. Let's take a moment and let's take a look at this next slide. When we start looking at the behaviors of this individual, here we have the know-it-all, right? The know-it-all, the one person who comes in, like I said, very prevalent with newbies. They know it all. They know every report that they can design. They know how to analyze data. They've done this before, and they are extremely disruptive to a team. A team starts, oftentimes, individuals start to ask themselves, well, gosh, maybe I really don't know how to do this work. Then we have the hanger. Now, you know it, I certainly don't have scientific names around this, but these are behaviors. And so I've given them names that I think are real handles. The hanger is the person who stands around in the cubicle or office or tries to get into meetings because they're always looking for more information about individuals, more information about projects that they're not even tied to. And why is that? Because this particular type of personality always likes to feel as though they have the answers to everything and they know everything and they're involved in everything. So what happens is they start to give this perception that they are all involved with the executive team and upper management, so that people start to, again, feel a little bit more intimidated by them and go along with some of their attitudes. Now, if you're a Winnie the Pooh reader, which I am, and I love Eeyore, the gloom and doom, because I think it's so funny how Eeyore just seems to find all the gloom and doom, but all of the team members around him and management can always help him rise above it, but it's gloom and doom. Gloom and doom, nothing's ever going to work right. The core values are just words on paper. Nobody lives them. We're not going to make our numbers. We're not going to figure out a project to complete on time. I mean, you know, you fill in the blanks of this kind of a personality. These are the behaviors that you do want to watch for. Well, let's take a look in our next slide when we talk about, okay, those behaviors. And again, I know that they are prevalent for many of you in this particular webinar with us today. You've seen them in your own workforce. So why do we keep them around? Well, recently a study that was conducted by Harvard Research by Michael Hausman and Dylan Miner, their particular data did show, you know what, that kind of a personality is a very high performing personality. And that's why employers keep them around. However, the data gathered conversely also indicated that they are very costly to the business. Costly to the business because of, again, how they basically prevent others in teamwork environments of really be able to produce their best. They actually, again, hiring to that type of a personality of a toxic employee, allowing them to stay and prevail inside your company, it's really shown that they were more expensive than if you hired a higher performing employee. Recently, Career Builder also did some research on bad hires, and their data showed us that 60% of the employers are adversely affected by bad hires. And interestingly, of the number one reason why employees were adversely affected is because they were just so difficult to get along with. That is, they being that toxic type employee. Also, another cost to your business is very interesting, and came out of the Harvard research, is that this is on the low side, very conservative, that we spend 2.8 hours a week on dealing with toxic employees, those problem employees that tend to create the havoc inside a business. But how and what do we do? Okay, so first let's take a look at, again, how are they impacting your business? Well, I gave you some data in the previous slide, but let's take a look. Leadership trust. All of a sudden, again, your employees have tried to come to supervisor, one-level manager, even up higher, to try to get someone to address the issues of how this toxic employee is behaving in the workplace. No one listens. So apathy prevails. Employees give up. They just don't bother anymore. Productivity is impacted because the individuals are on their own trying to resolve these issues. They are addressing over and over again to this particular type of personality their concerns in an effort, again, to get everything on the right track. They're taking the ownership on their own. Their productivity and their projects are being impacted. The third one, which is turnover. So employees are going to be more likely to leave you in an environment that is toxic, where, again, employees of this nature are there in the workforce, not completing projects, always creating difficulty inside the workforce. You're going to be impacted by that high turnover. It is indicating that a talent is more likely to leave an organization when they believe that these issues are not being addressed. And this kind of a market today, who can afford that? We have a hard enough time with just the shortage, not to mention, again, when we keep individuals inside the workplace that are not contributing to organization, we need to address this. So in a moment, we're going to talk about the 3 actions, but I want to point something out to you if I have not already. Please understand, we won't be naive here and think we're never, ever going to not hire a toxic employee, right? But if these 3-step processes that we'll talk about next will allow you to start to take ownership of what you can do to make sure it doesn't happen, you're proactive, and also how you manage it on the inside. So let's take a look. Let's move to this 3-step process, as I alluded to here. I'd just like to point out, I love this slide. It's got all the colors. It just really shows that there is optimism ahead, because if any of you on the telephone right now are dealing with this kind of a behavior inside your workplace, you don't feel like these are the happy colors around you. So let's take a look at the first step. First step process is consider some of these actions in the first step. Create an interview team. Get team members involved in the selection process that are your high performers, that know your core values, that know how to, again, speak with these interviews, or the candidates rather, during your interviews. You want to be looking for what we call the CQ. Basically, it's the civility quotient. In other words, have the interview team become involved to see how this person interacts inside a group. Are they pleasant, polite? Again, focusing on your core values, which, again, know your core values. Have your interview process include, if you will, the core values. Make sure everyone is participating in identifying those core values. And then there is a formal assessment. I cannot tell you enough how important formal assessments are across the board. We have one we'll speak to, it's called Best Work Data, but a formal assessment can really be the icing on the cake. It can be the tool that helps you truly understand the behaviors of what you are buying if you choose to hire the individual, and what you manage to in step 2. As we move the slide, our step 2 does focus on this issue of, again, observing early and counsel quickly. So what does that mean, observing early? Observing the behaviors that you don't want in your work environment and counseling the person early in that process. I like to give an example, which I unfortunately have seen far too many times. You get these project teams together and you always have, again, this one, well, not always, but frequently you can have a toxic employee inside this particular committee. And that toxic employee is the one that takes the project. They do all the work. They don't even address it to the team. They take it straight to management and say, hey, look what I've done. Management might respond like, hey, that's great. This is wonderful. Look, they took all this initiative. Don't go that route with this individual. This is exactly the kind of an individual you want to sit down and say, hey, you have a team. You have a team you want to work with. You want to have a team be part of the process. You want to be part of that process. And you coach that person, counsel them early on what your behavior expectation is. And then as we move to the third, which honestly, let's say you put in the best interview process to the best of your ability. You have an interview team that you're working with, and you basically have your formal assessment in place. And now all of a sudden you've counseled, your conscience is clear, and you say, you know what, there's no going forward with this individual. We can't even go backwards. We are here at this point in the line, and we need to release the employee. We need to end our employment relationship. And this is where, again, your trusted HR counselor, you have someone with you in your workplace and or, again, HR consulting can help you. You don't want your HR person to be, or your HR function to be a yes approach. They will go through the process. They'll make sure that you've minimized all your risk and your conscience is clear, and they will help you move forward so that you, again, are moving forward to protect the employees and protecting your business. And honestly, probably even that individual from being part of that environment because they have not proven themselves to be a good fit. So as a wrap up, again, some key points here. You want your organization to have identified key values of your organization. You want to manage to it, you want to hire to it, you want to coach to it. If you don't have those core values in place, then that's something we need to talk about. Also, a selection system process. Selecting employees interviewing isn't just conducting an interview to see if they can technically fulfill the job. Create a process that really does fit your culture, one that is meaningful, that will do the best that you can to make sure you're hiring to the type of behavior that you need to be successful in your business. And then also take a look at those formal assessments, the best work data. The best work data is just a tool of many, but it's one that we use pretty regularly here that we believe that you will find value. And most importantly, coach, counsel, talk to employees. Make sure that they are hearing your message, and we can also help you with that. Remember, it's really taking care of the whole of your business, because if you have your employees coming in who value your workplace, who feel comfortable in your workplace, again, there will be more strength and talent they're used in the workplace, and they're more likely, 6 times more likely, in fact, to be more productive, have joy in the work, and actually enjoy coming to work. So this next slide, again, take a moment, jot this information down, because we would love to send you a best work data assessment. It's a value of $125, as you can see there. We would love to have you take it. Just send me the email. All the information is there for you. So with that said, why don't we take a moment and let's answer some of your questions. Well, you may have joined us today because you have a specific issue at hand. And one of them, for example, may be, how do you know when it's time to let the employee go? Again, that's difficult because you have to make sure that you have that coaching and counseling in place. And that's where, again, having an advocate, HR, an advocate for both that employee and you will become most beneficial. You protect yourself by making sure that, again, you have the kind of documentation, that your coaching and counseling sessions have dealt with what the behaviors are that you find intolerable, not just missed deadlines and technical aspects of the work. Coaching, documentation is critical. So another one has come in and it basically has said, I am dealing, with a particular situation and would like some help. That's fine. Again, call me. You have the information here. Call us. And again, we will be able to, at least on the front end, give you some few key pointers of what you might be able to do by following these 3 points in our seminar today. Thank you very much for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our next webinars.